After having the opportunity of working with published playwrights and authors, I've come to learn that there's a secret to novel writing and writing other long form in general. And today, I'm going to share it with you. Hi, I'm Amanda, and since I've been in college, I've written a novella, a novel, a play, and a play adaptation. I'm currently studying theater and English. I'm in my third year right now, and as I've been studying these topics, I've gotten to meet professors and professionals in the entertainment industry who write as a living. I've learned a lot of secrets from these different people as I've continued my writing journey, and I want to share those secrets with you today because I think that knowledge should be accessible to everyone, and if you are struggling with writing novels or plays or screenplays or other long-form pieces of writing, I'm here to tell you how to move past these roadblocks. Now, am I going to say this will completely eliminate writer's block altogether? No, because we're writers and we're always going to procrastinate and have blocks, but I think this will help you immensely. Point number one, outlining. Now, you might think this is tedious, but hear me out. Believe me, I did not like outlining at all. And then I came to look at it in a different light than I had always imagined it before after working with a playwright. I got the opportunity to work alongside a playwright who has produced and written shows for Carnegie Hall, for Broadway, for the West End. One of the first things he taught me is that when you write a play or a musical, you need a treatment. And let me tell you what a treatment is. It's like an outline, but it's a little bit simpler. And I think it's not as daunting if you look at an outline as a treatment. And later on, after working with this playwright, I took a playwriting class at my university with another playwright, and he also suggested using treatments. I decided if these two professional published playwrights use this method, why not try to use it for writing a novel or a screenplay? Because it works for a play and it's long form, why not try it for a novel? And it does work. So let me tell you the difference between an outline and a treatment in my mind. I think people think with an outline, you have to be really detailed. But with a treatment, you're just trying to find the basic plot points. If you have these basic plot points, then the rest you can fill in later. You can change things as long as you have these basic ideas of plot structure. Sometimes you end up changing those plot points, but because you have an outline or a phantom of a story, there's something to reference. I took a capstone directing class my sophomore year of college, and it really helped me put the story structure into a different perspective. So you see the little pyramid. Maybe I'll draw it so you can see what I mean. I'm probably doing this really wrong. And it's usually like this pyramid. I think it's Freytag's pyramid. I might be wrong. I'm studying English, but I'm only an English minor, okay? But when I took a directing class, instead of a pyramid, it was like this long arch and then like a little boop. And I actually preferred that because you want your exposition. You want to set the tone for the story. Honestly, sometimes you can break that rule and start in media res, which means start in the action, but still, if you're start in an action place, there's some exposition that's going to be happening there. Like maybe they're in the middle of a fight and that's how you start your story, but why are they fighting or who are they fighting? That's exposition, whether it's action-packed or once upon a time. And then you hit the conflict, and the conflict is what starts this little upward descent. So once you have your conflict, this gets the ball rolling in your story. Then you're gonna wanna have plot point 1, plot point 2, plot point 3, plot point 4, the crisis, which is the point of no return, which leads to the climax. So I like the crisis. I think it's a nice addition to this pyramid because usually it doesn't just be like, oh, here's all this rising action and boom, here's the climax. Usually there's something that comes before that's really important, and then the climax. There's usually a load of important points, and the stakes go up and up and up as the story goes on. So I like that there's plot points. Because now when I'm writing a story, whether it be a novel or a play or a screenplay, I think, okay, what are the important points that I want to get across in this rising action that leads to the climax? And what is the tipping point? What is the crisis where the character is like, okay, there's no going back now. It's time for the climax, baby. So think of it like that. You got your exposition, your conflict, your 4 plot points, your crisis, and your climax. And then you have the falling action, which is drawn out. In Freytag's pyramid, the falling action is like so long. But in the directing class I took, I don't know if there's a name for this type of structure, but it's this short little line. And I think that's more realistic because usually once you hit the climax of the story, you don't want an equally as long falling action, let's be real. You want something there. It's not going to be nearly as long as your 4 plot points in your crisis leading up to the climax, because the climax is the height of the action of the story. It's the defining moment. It's where your dramatic question is answered, which leads me to my next point, the dramatic question. The dramatic question is going to come up in your conflict, and it should be answered by the end of your story. Let's say that the character is trying to prove that they're not their parents. Say this character is the daughter of a villain, and she wants to show, like, am I my own person, or am I going to be evil like my mom? I guess it's kind of the plot to Ever After High. I haven't seen that show in years. Then the dramatic question is, can I be my own person, or am I just like my mother? Am I doomed to the same fate as her and becoming evil? Well, at the end of the story, you're going to know, did she turn out like her mother, or did she prove that she was her own person and that she could write her own story? That's an example of a dramatic question, and every story needs a dramatic question. It can be very deep and obvious, or it can be more subtle. It can be more thematic. I think if you have those things planned out, or at least a fragment of those things, it's easy for the story to fall in place around those points. Honestly, I'll tell you about my novel that I'm really proud of it. I finished writing a novel in a year. I had this theme in mind that I felt was important to get across, and I wanted to do a different take on the superhero story that I haven't seen before. It's a realism take with some sci-fi, and there's a serial killer as well, and it's all about, like, if people had abilities, powers, then they probably wouldn't look like traditional superpowers, and they would probably do bad things with them because people aren't meant to have that kind of power, and most people would probably abuse that kind of power. And I felt that in reality, if there were people with powers, nobody would be fans of them, they'd be terrified of them. And there's these, like, 6 people that decide that they want to use their abilities for good, but no one believes them and no one expects them to do that because they just expect the worst. So the premise of the story is, what's the point of being a hero if no one expects you to be one and everyone expects you to be the worst version of yourself? Why persevere and why be a hero anyways? And you know what? Another point I have about writing a novel fast has to do with the editing process, where I hear a lot of people say, don't edit while you're writing. But I hear other people say you should always edit. And honestly, I think they're both wrong. I think you need to have a balance, and I'll explain why. When I was writing my novel, I took advantage of something called creative writing workshops. That's my other secret, creative writing workshops. Oh my gosh, this unlocks all of the secrets of the universe. Hear me out. I learned from a professor, my playwriting professor that I had my freshman year, that he encouraged people to try creative writing workshops. Honestly, you can do a creative writing workshop in a college setting, which I think is probably one of the best settings because you have people that are studying the topic as well as professors if they're interested in participating in a creative writing workshop with you. But it's also possible to do it with friends or colleagues or other people you know, because I have done that before when I wasn't in a class but wanted people to participate in a workshop with me. And let me tell you what it is. It's like a table reading. Like when you're in plays or if you're in a movie, you get a copy of the script, and you've probably seen there's like a writer's table or like a formation of tables, and the actors all sit around it and they have little name tags and they're all reading as their character and they go through the entire script in one sitting. That's a table reading. And that's also kind of what a creative writing workshop is. You have a creative work that you give to this table of people, and you ask them to read it, and then you ask their opinion of it. And I know it can be scary for people to read your work and criticize it, but just think it's constructive criticism, and you want to know what people think. And you don't always have to listen to what people think, but I've come to learn that if a lot of people bring up the same point, it's a problem in my work, or it's a plot hole. It's nice having a second set of eyes to give your work a look, because you're just in your head so much as the author, as the writer. And when you show other people your work, or in a play, when you hear them read your dialogue out loud, you realize that sounds dumb, or that's unnatural, or no one would talk like that, or wait, why did I miss that in chapter 1? This was supposed to happen, and then in chapter 2 I act like it didn't happen. You know, people will catch those things that you might overlook just because you spend so much time in your story and in your head and with these characters, and these other people have a fresh perspective. So what I did when writing this novel, there was a creative writing workshop that started at my school, which was extracurricular my freshman year. That was the first year they started having it. And people that would attend it were English majors, film majors, theater majors, people that were editors for the school paper, people that loved writing. They'd submit creative writing works like poems or short stories, and what I decided was I'll submit a chapter every week, Charles Dickens style, where, if you don't know Charles Dickens, he used to write his stories by doing a chapter a week kind of thing, and people would be like, tune in next time to see the next chapter. So that's what I did. I would do a chapter a week, and we had workshops like twice a month. So I'd be like, here's my first chapter of my book. I'd hear what people thought. I'd hear what characters they liked, what plot points and aspects of the story they liked, which things confused them, or which things they assumed. Sometimes they'd assume certain things about a character that I didn't even think of, and I thought, I don't want them to see the character that way. I need to change my style of how I'm writing them. Or I'd think, that's a good idea. I'm going to make the character that way after all, because that's what they assume. So I would bring chapter after chapter, and I only got to do about 5 chapters before summer started, 4 or 5 chapters. But it was really helpful hearing their thoughts, and I learned what characters people liked. And sometimes I'd realize this one character is a fan favorite, but I don't bring her up enough. I should add her in more because people are really intrigued by her story. I was going off of my outline, I was going off of my treatment and what I had in store for these characters, and I kept the end the same, but the way I got there started to change and evolve as I went to these workshops, because I started seeing things that I would have never have seen before. I know it can be scary, like I said, to just put your work out on the table and for people to just critique it. But one thing I learned from my playwright mentor who had these shows on Broadway and the West End and Carnegie Hall is, in the industry, people are going to give it to you as it is. They are not going to soften it. They are going to be ruthless, okay? They're going to say, this sucks. What were you thinking? And you know what? Maybe they're right. But when you're in these workshops, this critique is constructive, and they're your friends or your peers, and they're going to be gentle and kind. And if they put you down, then just don't invite them to your next workshop. You want people that love you and want you to succeed, but also you want them to put it as it is and not keep things from you because they're afraid of hurting your feelings, because you're never going to succeed as a writer if you don't find out what's wrong with your writing. Like, something I struggled with was setting a scene and being very descriptive, because my strong point is dialogue, and I also like to add a lot of body language and movement things in my story. But sometimes I forget to talk about the setting. Like, I'll talk about how the characters are moving. Maybe they're nervously like rubbing their neck, and maybe they're kind of looking at their feet because they don't want to make eye contact, and maybe they have this certain dialogue style, but I'd forget to say what room they were in, or what color the wall was, or what they were sitting on, or where they were, you know? And after going to a lot of workshops, I've really improved on that point, where now I've shown stories to family members and they'll say that one of their favorite points was a location or a setting description, while before I did those workshops, that was something I'd always get in my critiques. So it helped me grow as a writer. And honestly, now when I go to workshops, I'm like, rip me apart. Like, if there's something wrong, tell me, and don't even be nice about it. Like, just tell me what it is. Like I said, you don't always have to take all the advice given. Like, sometimes when I was working on my musical, I had like 5 table readings of different kinds of fans, and I'd hear what they all said. And sometimes someone would be like, I don't really like how this song has this tone. But then I'd think, well, I like it, and nobody else at the table reading had a problem with it. So I'm just gonna thank them for their critique, but not take it to heart and not really use it. But then sometimes I'd see several people would be confused about this one dialogue exchange and think it meant something else. And then I realized that needs to be fixed because people are confused by it. Or I'd hear them reading the dialogue out loud and it just sounded awkward, you know? Let people see your work, tell them not to hold back, don't take it to heart because they only are going to help you. And if someone is just being blatantly mean and is not being constructive in any way, then don't do a workshop or table reading with them again. It's a learning curve. So those were the secrets to writing a novel or other long form works. If you'd like me to do any other videos on writing or playwriting or theater, English, like I said, I'm also studying film right now as well. I'd love to share some tips that I've learned because honestly, knowledge should be freely given. So let me know. And if you have any questions, I can try to answer them in the comments. I can't promise I'll get to all of them, but I'll do my best. And if you guys ever want me to talk about my novel, let me know because I've been working on this novel weekly in the editing process. It's at 70,000 words right now, which is honestly crazy. But I'm really proud of it. I'm very, very proud of this novel. I think it's one of the best things I've ever written. Thank you so much for watching, and I am going to do my homework. I have a lot of homework. Happy fall! Happy fall. I got pumpkin earrings. Wait, can you see them?